The massive Imperial science vessel hung motionless against the backdrop of distant stars. Inside its primary observation deck, lead scientist Lore stared at his display screen with growing confusion. The energy readings made no sense. He had been monitoring this unexplored sector for 3 standard cycles, and until now, it had seemed unremarkable. "Sir, you need to see this," called out one of his junior researchers. "The signal patterns, they're unlike anything in our database." Lore moved across the deck, his ceremonial robes trailing behind him. The Empire insisted on formal wear even during research missions, a tradition he found ridiculous. As he reached the researcher's station, his eyes widened. "How did we miss this?" he muttered, more to himself than to his subordinate. The signals were coming from a small solar system, previously dismissed as uninhabited, but these energy signatures suggested otherwise. The next few days were filled with frantic activity. The Imperial Science Division redirected 3 more research vessels to the area. They discovered a planet teeming with life, and more importantly, with civilization. The dominant species called themselves humans. Primitive, but intriguing, Lore reported to the Imperial High Command. They have achieved basic spaceflight, established a few colonies on their neighboring planet, and placed primitive satellites around their world. By our standards, they are at technology level 2, maybe 3 at best. The High Command's holographic projections flickered as they discussed this new finding. "Are they a threat?" asked High Commander Vale, his massive form dominating the projection. "Hardly," Lore chuckled. "Their most advanced weapons use chemical propulsion. Their ships can barely reach their system's edge. They would be no match for even our oldest vessels." "Excellent." Vale's voice carried satisfaction. "Another world for the collection. Prepare the standard first contact protocols. We'll send Ambassador Thex to deliver our terms." What no one on the Imperial vessel noticed was the small, seemingly inactive satellite that had been tracking their every move. Deep below the surface of Mars, in a facility that didn't officially exist, Admiral James Stone watched the Imperial vessels with growing concern. "They took the bait," he said to the assembled military command. The room was carved directly into the red rock of Mars, filled with technology that would make the Empire's scientists weep with envy. Just like all the others, they see what they want to see. Grand Marshal Wilson nodded, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic displays showing the Imperial vessels. "History repeats itself. They find us, think we're primitive, and plan to conquer us. How many times has this happened now?" 17 times in the last century alone, Stone replied. "You'd think someone would notice the pattern. Every alien civilization that's discovered us has disappeared shortly after attempting invasion. Their pride blinds them," Wilson said, standing to address the room. "Our ancestors learned the hard way, didn't they? When the first aliens came, thousands of years ago, we weren't ready. But we learned. We adapted. We survived." Around the room, heads nodded. Earth's true history wasn't written in any public books. The ancient monuments, the mysterious structures that archaeologists couldn't explain, all remnants of that first devastating contact. "Begin Phase 2, Stone ordered. "Let's show them our primitive defense fleet. Make it convincing. Old fusion drives, weak shields, nothing too advanced. Let them think we're scared but trying to be brave." As the orders went out, Stone walked to the window overlooking the massive underground hangar. Stretching for miles in every direction were the real ships of Earth's fleet, vessels that could tear apart space itself, weapons that could extinguish suns, shields that could withstand supernovas, all hidden, all waiting. "The Empire's about to learn what every other would-be conqueror discovered," he murmured. "Humanity isn't trapped in here with them. They're trapped in here with us." The Imperial flagship Glory of the Stars emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Its golden hull gleamed in the distant sunlight, dwarfing the small escort fleet that surrounded it. Ambassador Thex stood on the command deck, admiring how the ship's shadow fell across the stars. "Send the announcement," he ordered, straightening his elaborate diplomatic robes. "Let's show these primitives how a proper civilization makes an entrance." Across Earth and its colonies, every communication device suddenly activated. The Empire's message played everywhere, on phones, computers, televisions, and public displays. Ambassador Thex's face appeared on every screen. "People of Earth," his voice boomed, "you have the honor of being chosen by the Galactic Empire. We bring civilization, order, and progress. Prepare to receive our diplomatic vessel. Your leaders have one standard day to respond." In the White House's Situation Room, Ambassador Marcus Thompson watched the message replay. He looked exactly like what the Empire would expect. A nervous, middle-aged man in a slightly wrinkled suit. Perfect for the role he needed to play. "They love their dramatic entrances, don't they?" he said, turning to his team. "Well, let's give them the show they're expecting. Send our response. Make it sound appropriately awed and slightly frightened." The human response was everything the Empire hoped for. A humble invitation to land, filled with phrases like "honored by your presence" and "eager to learn from your advanced civilization." Ambassador Thex could hardly contain his satisfaction. The landing site was prepared in a large field outside Washington, D.C. The Empire's shuttle descended from the clouds like a giant golden bird, kicking up dust as it landed. A crowd of carefully selected humans watched from behind barriers, playing their parts perfectly. Ambassador Thompson led the welcoming committee. As the shuttle's doors opened with a dramatic hiss of steam, he stepped forward, hands carefully visible to show he carried no weapons. Not that he needed any. Thex emerged, flanked by guards in gleaming armor. He towered over the humans, standing nearly 8 feet tall. "Greetings, primitive ones," he announced, his translator converting his words to English. "We are pleased by your quick acceptance of our authority." Thompson bowed slightly. Not too deep, just enough to seem respectful while hiding his smile. "We are honored by your presence, Ambassador. Though I must ask, what exactly does joining your empire entail?" For the next hour, Thex outlined the Empire's terms. The humans would surrender all military control to Imperial forces. They would pay taxes and resources. They would accept Imperial governors and laws. In return, they would receive protection and access to some basic Imperial technology. Of course, Thex concluded, refusing these generous terms would be unwise. Our fleet is positioned to ensure compliance. Thompson glanced at the sky, where the Imperial ships hung like bright stars. "We understand completely," he said, his voice carrying just the right amount of fear. "We will need time to discuss your terms with all Earth's nations." "You have one day," Thex declared. "We are being generous because you seem to grasp your situation well." As the Imperial delegation returned to their shuttle, Thompson watched them go. In his ear, a tiny communicator activated. "Admiral Stone here. The show going well." "Perfect," Thompson whispered. "They don't suspect a thing. Their arrogance is almost impressive. Their fleet's exactly where we want them," Stone replied. "The real ships are in position, hidden in the dimensional pockets. Once they make their move, they'll learn," Thompson agreed. "Just like all the others did." He turned to walk away from the landing site, maintaining his nervous facade for any watching Imperial eyes. Behind him, the Imperial shuttle rose into the sky, its engines roaring. Ambassador Thex sat inside, already drafting his victory report to the High Command. He never noticed the slight shimmer in the air around his ship, the sign of advanced sensors mapping every detail of Imperial technology. The first contact was complete. Now, the real game would begin. While the Imperial ships circled Earth like hungry predators, the real action was happening deep beneath the surface of Mars. The underground base stretched for hundreds of miles, carved through the red planet's rock over centuries. In the main control room, Admiral Stone watched dozens of holographic displays showing the Empire's fleet movements. "They're positioning for a standard conquest formation," he noted, pointing to the tactical display, just like the textbook they've used for the last 1,000 years. Around him, the command center hummed with activity. Unlike the primitive technology they showed the Empire, this room contained humanity's true achievements. Screens floated in midair, officers controlled systems with thought commands, and energy readings that would make Imperial scientists faint scrolled across every surface. "Status report on the fleet," Stone asked. A young officer stepped forward. "All ships ready, sir. We have 5,000 vessels hidden in dimensional pockets around the system. The Empire can't detect them. Their sensors aren't advanced enough to detect our cloaking technology." Stone nodded and turned to face the massive window overlooking the underground hangar. The sight still impressed him, even after 20 years of service. Earth's real warships filled the cavern, their dark hulls absorbing light. Each one was larger than the Empire's flagship, packed with weapons that could tear apart space itself. "It's funny," he said to no one in particular. "Every alien race that finds us makes the same mistake. They see our public technology, our chemical rockets, our simple satellites, and think that's all we have." In another part of the base, engineers were studying the scans of Imperial technology. They had seen it all before. The Empire's advanced ships were powered by fusion reactors, technology humanity had moved past centuries ago. Their weapons used plasma and lasers, while Earth's fleet wielded weapons that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. Deep beneath Europa's ice, humanity's second hidden base was also preparing. Grand Marshal Wilson stood in its quantum communication room, talking to Earth's leaders. "The Empire's ultimatum expires in 12 hours, he reported. "Their invasion fleet will arrive 6 hours after that. Everything is proceeding exactly as we planned." "Are we sure this is necessary?" asked one of the world leaders. "Couldn't we just show them our real technology and negotiate?" Wilson shook his head. "We tried that with the first 3 alien civilizations that found us. Each time, they came back with bigger fleets, determined to steal our advances. No, this way is better. Let them think they're the conquerors until it's too late." The meeting continued, but Wilson's mind wandered to humanity's true history. The public didn't know about the first alien contact thousands of years ago, how those visitors hadn't come in peace, how humanity had barely survived. The ancient monuments on Earth, the pyramids, the stone circles, the massive stone platforms, weren't built by primitive humans. They were the remnants of that first terrible war. "Marshal," an aide interrupted his thoughts, "we're detecting energy spikes from the Imperial fleet. They're running weapon drills." Wilson smiled grimly. "Let them practice. Their weapons can't even scratch our lowest-grade shields." In the observation room above the Europa base's main hangar, he watched as engineers made final adjustments to humanity's ships. Unlike the clunky, visible engines of Imperial vessels, Earth's ships used gravity drives. They could cross the solar system in minutes, slip between dimensions, and generate shields that could withstand the heart of a sun. "Send the final message to all ship commanders," Wilson ordered. "When the Empire attacks, let them think they're winning at first. Let their overconfidence grow. Then, when they've committed their entire fleet," he let the sentence hang unfinished. The aide nodded and left. In 12 hours, the Empire would learn what every would-be conqueror eventually discovered. Humanity hadn't spent the last 1,000 years cowering in fear of alien contact. They had spent it preparing, building, and waiting. The trap was set. All that remained was for the Empire to spring it. The Imperial fleet arrived with all the subtlety of a thunderstorm. 500 warships dropped out of hyperspace, their golden hulls blazing in Earth's sunlight. At their center, the Imperial command ship Victory Eternal dwarfed its escorts, stretching nearly 5 miles from bow to stern. Commander Thex stood on his bridge, watching Earth grow larger on the main screen. "Send the Victory broadcast," he ordered, smoothing his ceremonial armor. "Let's show these primitives how hopeless their situation is." Across Earth, screens once again flickered to life. The Empire's message was short and clear. Your time for peaceful surrender has ended. Witness the power of the Imperial fleet. In response, Earth launched its defense. A handful of small ships rose from various spaceports, their chemical engines leaving long trails in the atmosphere. They formed a ragged line between Earth and the Imperial fleet, looking exactly like what everyone expected from a primitive civilization's last stand. "How pathetic," one of Thex's officers sneered. "Their ships are so crude, our sensors can barely classify them as spacecraft." Thex raised his hand, calling for silence. "Record everything," he commanded. "This will make an excellent educational video for future conquests. Show primitive species what happens when they resist." The human ships launched their first attack. Simple nuclear missiles streaked across space, their warheads exactly what you'd expect from a technology level 2 civilization. The Imperial fleet didn't even bother raising their shields. Their point defense systems swatted the missiles aside like insects. "Return fire," Thex ordered. "Minimal power. We don't want to damage the planet. It's about to become Imperial property after all." The Imperial ships fired their plasma cannons. The human vessels scattered, their movements panicked and disorganized. 2 of them were hit, exploding in bright flashes that made the Imperial crew cheer. "Look how they run," someone shouted. "Like frightened animals." Deep underground in his Mars base, Admiral Stone watched the battle through quantum sensors. "They're completely buying it," he reported to the world leaders. "Our ships are performing perfectly, just incompetent enough to be believable." "Is it time?" Grand Marshal Wilson asked over the secure channel. "Not yet," Stone replied. "Let them commit more forces. Let them think they've won completely. Their victory broadcast is still transmitting. Let them finish gloating." On the Imperial command ship, Thex was doing exactly that. "People of Earth," he announced, his image broadcasting to every screen on the planet, "your pathetic resistance has been crushed. Your primitive weapons cannot harm us. Your ships are destroyed. Prepare for Imperial occupation." He turned to his fleet commanders. "Move into low orbit. Launch the landing ships. Show them what real military power looks like." The Imperial fleet began its descent toward Earth. 500 ships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. They looked unstoppable, invincible, absolute in their power. None of them noticed when their long-range communications suddenly went dark. "Sir," one of Stone's officers reported, "the Empire's fleet is exactly where we want them. They're broadcasting their victory speech to their homeworlds, but our quantum scramblers are blocking the signal. Whatever happens next, their Empire won't know about it until it's too late." Stone nodded and opened a channel to all of Earth's hidden ships. "All forces, prepare to emerge. Remember your training. These aren't the first overconfident aliens we've dealt with, and they probably won't be the last." In dimensional pockets all around the solar system, humanity's real fleet powered up their engines. 5,000 ships, each carrying weapons that could reshape reality itself, prepared to reveal themselves. "Let them finish their speech," Stone commanded. "Let them have their moment of absolute triumph." He smiled, but there was no humor in it. It's always more satisfying that way. The Empire's fleet continued its descent, their victory seemingly complete. They never noticed how the space around them had started to ripple, like water about to boil. The Imperial fleet hung in Earth's orbit, their golden ships reflecting sunlight like artificial stars. Commander Thex was preparing to launch the ground invasion when his sensor officer suddenly jumped from his station. "Sir," massive energy readings. They're everywhere." Before Thex could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. Dimensional rifts appeared all around his fleet, massive tears in reality that made his crew's eyes hurt just looking at them. From these rifts emerged humanity's true fleet. "Impossible," Thex whispered. The human ships were enormous, their dark hulls seeming to absorb both light and hope. The smallest of them was twice the size of his command ship. Their designs were unlike anything in Imperial records. No visible engines, no conventional weapons ports, just smooth surfaces that seemed to bend space around them. "Sir," his communication officer called out, voice shaking. "We're receiving a transmission. It's from Admiral Stone of the Earth Defense Force." Stone's face appeared on the main screen, calm and composed. He wasn't wearing any obvious military uniform, just a simple black suit. "Commander Thex," he said pleasantly, "I believe it's time we had an honest conversation." "What trickery is this?" Thex demanded, trying to hide his fear. "Our scans showed you were primitive. Your technology was basic." "Yes," Stone nodded. "That's what we wanted you to see. We've had a lot of practice at looking harmless. Your empire isn't the first to fall for it, and probably won't be the last." On his command ship screens, Thex watched in horror as more human vessels emerged. They took positions around his fleet with impossible precision, moving without any visible means of propulsion. His tactical display tried to analyze their capabilities and simply showed error messages. "Full power to weapons," Thex ordered. "Show these deceiving primitives the true might of the Empire." The Imperial fleet opened fire. 500 ships unleashed their most powerful weapons: plasma beams, laser cannons, and atomic disruptors. The energy output was enough to crack a small moon. None of it made any difference. The human ships didn't even bother raising shields. The Empire's most powerful weapons simply vanished into the dark hulls, absorbed without leaving a mark. It was like throwing pebbles at a mountain. "An impressive light show," Stone commented, still smiling. "Now, would you like to see what real weapons look like?" A single human ship, smaller than the others, fired what looked like a tiny pulse of blue light. It hit one of the Imperial destroyers. The destroyer didn't explode. Instead, it simply ceased to exist, along with a sphere of space around it. No debris, no explosion, just nothing. "That," Stone explained, "was our lowest-powered weapon, used at its minimum setting." Panic spread through the Imperial fleet. Ships tried to jump to hyperspace, only to find they couldn't. The human vessels had created some kind of dimensional lock around the entire system. "High Command," Thex shouted into his communicator. "We need reinforcements. Send everything." But there was no response. His fleet was completely cut off. Admiral Stone's face reappeared on all Imperial screens. "You're probably wondering why we hide our true capabilities," he said. "Why we let everyone think we're primitive. The answer is simple. We learned the hard way that showing your full strength just makes you a target. But now you've attacked us, so hiding is no longer necessary." The human ships moved closer, their massive forms blotting out the stars. Thex realized with growing horror that his entire fleet was now completely surrounded. "So," Stone continued, "shall we discuss the terms of your surrender? And this time, we'll be the ones making the demands." Thex looked at his tactical display one last time. 5,000 human ships against his 500. Technology so advanced it might as well be magic. And somewhere out there, an empire that had no idea what it had just walked into. He gave the only order he could. "Stand down all weapons. Request terms of surrender." The trap had closed perfectly. Despite Commander Thex's surrender order, not everyone in the Imperial fleet was ready to admit defeat. 3 Imperial cruisers, commanded by young officers too proud or too foolish to accept reality, broke formation and charged the human ships. How predictable, Admiral Stone sighed from his command center on Mars. "There's always someone who wants to go down fighting." He opened a channel to all ships. "Disable them, but try not to kill anyone. They're about to become very important object lessons." The 3 Imperial cruisers fired everything they had: plasma torpedoes, particle beams, and nuclear warheads. Their weapons lit up space like artificial supernovas. Against the human ships, they might as well have been throwing snowballs at a blast furnace. A single human vessel moved to intercept them. It was the smallest in the Earth fleet, barely the size of an Imperial destroyer. Without firing a shot, it projected a gravitational field that simply stopped all the Imperial weapons in space. The deadly energies hung there, frozen between the ships like colorful fireworks. Impossible. One of the Imperial officers screamed over the open channel. You can't just stop energy weapons. Actually, Stone's voice replied calmly, manipulating energy is one of the first things we mastered. Would you like to see what else we can do? The human ship released another gravity pulse. All three Imperial cruisers suddenly found themselves unable to move, caught in an invisible grip that their engines couldn't break. Then, slowly and deliberately, their weapon systems began to disassemble themselves. Metal and energy weapons simply fell apart, each component separating neatly as if removed by invisible hands. In his command ship, Thex watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. How? He whispered. How did you hide this level of technology from us? Stone's face appeared on his screen again. The same way we hid from the last 17 civilizations that tried to conquer us. We learned long ago that looking weak is the best defense. Your scanners showed you exactly what we wanted them to see. A primitive species barely reaching for the stars. Around the disabled cruisers, space itself began to ripple. Small holes opened in reality, swallowing all the Imperial weapons that had been frozen in space. We're sending your weapons into a pocket dimension, Stone explained. Don't worry, we'll dispose of them safely. Suddenly, alarms blared across the Imperial fleet. 5 Imperial destroyers had managed to break free of the dimensional lock and jump to hyperspace. They were heading back to Imperial space at maximum speed. Should we stop them? A human officer asked Stone. No, Stone smiled. Let them go. Let them tell the Empire what they've seen here. It will make our next conversation with your leaders much easier. The remaining Imperial ships hung motionless in space, their crews watching in stunned silence as human vessels began systematic sweeps of their fleet. Each ship was enveloped in a soft blue field that neutralized all its weapons and drive systems. For those of you who surrendered peacefully, Stone announced to the Imperial fleet, you will be treated well. Your crews will be our guests until diplomatic arrangements are made with your empire. Those who resisted, he paused, looking at the 3 disabled cruisers, will still be treated well, but they'll have more explaining to do. A massive human ship moved alongside Thex's command vessel. It was close enough now that he could see its hull wasn't really black. It was covered in patterns that seemed to shift and move, like waves in a dark ocean. Commander Thex, Stone addressed him directly. Please prepare your ship for boarding. We have much to discuss about the future relationship between humanity and the Empire. As Thex gave the orders to his crew, he realized something that chilled him to his core. This hadn't been a battle. It hadn't even been a contest. It had been a demonstration, carefully planned and perfectly executed. And somewhere out there, 5 Imperial destroyers were racing home to spread the word. Humanity was not what they seemed, not by a long shot. 1 month after the failed invasion, Commander Thex stood before the Imperial High Council. The massive chamber was silent as he finished his report, his voice echoing off the ancient walls. The faces of the council members showed a mixture of disbelief and fear. So, High Commander Vale spoke first. You're telling us that Earth, a planet we marked as primitive, possesses technology that makes our fleet look like children's toys? Yes, Thex replied simply. They can manipulate gravity, create pocket dimensions, and disable our most powerful weapons with ease. And that's just what they showed us. I suspect they have far more capabilities they kept hidden. The council chamber erupted in shouting. Some demanded immediate revenge, calling for the Empire's entire fleet to attack Earth. Others wanted to sue for peace before humanity decided to show them what else they could do. The debate ended when a quiet voice spoke from the chamber entrance. Perhaps I can help clarify the situation. Ambassador Marcus Thompson stood there, still wearing his simple suit. No one had seen him enter. The Imperial Guard's weapons didn't work, and their communication devices were silent. The message was clear. Humanity could reach them anywhere. Your empire, Thompson said, walking calmly to the center of the chamber, is at a crossroads. The 5 destroyers that escaped our demonstration have surely told you what they saw. But let me be clearer. He pulled out a small device and activated it. The air above him filled with holographic images of Earth's fleet. The council members watched in silence as the recording showed their mighty Imperial fleet being disabled without a single shot fired. We don't want war, Thompson continued. We never have. That's why we hide our true capabilities. But now that you've forced our hand, we need to establish new rules. He laid out humanity's terms. The Empire would maintain its territory, but cease all military expansion. They would need to free several enslaved species, and most importantly, they would have to accept Earth as an equal partner, not a subject world. If you agree, Thompson said, we'll share some of our technology. Not our weapons, we're not foolish, but we can help you improve your people's lives. Medical technology, clean energy, faster ships for peaceful purposes. And if we refuse, one council member asked. Thompson's smile didn't reach his eyes. Then we'll leave you alone. Completely alone. No trade, no contact, no communication. And if you ever try to attack us again. He let the sentence hang unfinished. The council took less than an hour to agree to the terms. Back on Earth, Admiral Stone watched the diplomatic feed from his office in the Mars base. Well, he said to Grand Marshal Wilson, that's 18 for 18. Every empire that's found us has either become a partner or learned to leave us alone. Wilson nodded, looking at the displays showing Earth's fleet returning to their dimensional hiding spots. Do you think they'll keep their word? They don't have a choice, Stone replied. They know we can reach their homeworld anytime we want. More importantly, they'd know there might be other capabilities we haven't shown them yet. He turned to look at the massive underground hangar. The real ships were disappearing one by one, returning to their secret bases. Soon, Earth would again appear primitive to any watching eyes. The best defense, Stone mused, isn't a strong military or advanced weapons. It's making sure no one knows you have them until it's too late. In the Imperial Palace, Commander Thex watched ships being loaded with humanitarian supplies, part of the new trade agreement with Earth. He thought about how sure he'd been of victory just a month ago. How certain he'd been of humanity's weakness. Commander, a junior officer approached him. The humans sent us specifications for improving our medical technology. It's incredible. Thex nodded. The Empire was learning what he had learned. Sometimes the most powerful civilizations were the ones who chose to appear weak. And humanity had mastered that art perfectly. The stars sparkled overhead, and somewhere out there, Earth's fleet waited, hidden but ready, just in case anyone else needed to learn the same lesson.